Okay, good morning. Joe Wenberg, Bluebird Semaphore. It's a Sunday morning. It's 9:30, and I decided I would do a videotape before I did anything else. And I would try to enjoy a cup of coffee while I'm doing that, which makes a lot of sense, really, when you think of it. Anyway, today I turned on some light so you could see some of my paintings on the wall behind me. Some of the things going on over here, you can't see them. That's the corner. Then if you go through here, there's some doors, and then over here, let's see if you can see them. If I go like this. You probably can see some of them. All right, so there's a lot of paintings on the walls. And that was a project, putting them up there, that I started recently and recently completed. It wasn't a piece of cake, I can tell you that much, but it worked. They have a nice product. I think I maybe even mentioned it before, to put those paintings on the wall without hurting the wall. The product is put out by, it's, yeah, I'm pretty sure I told you something like Command. This little system kind of deal where you get a number of things, including this is the hook. See, the hook is quite substantial. And you put two-sided tape on here and two-sided tape on the wall, and you go like this, and you hold it for a while, and then you hang the painting on there. So, and the tape and the stuff comes right off. They leave a little ear on the bottom for you to grab and pull. It comes right off. Very ingenious. So anyway, what am I going to talk about today on Bluebird Semaphore? Well, I started talking about General Joseph Stilwell and his adventures in Burma, China, India during World War II. So, World War II for the United States, if you don't know it, you've probably been living in La La Land, but we all know this. It really kicked off with Pearl Harbor, with the Japanese, with their sneak attack. And so my readings to date, it's kind of like a little bit of catch up, not the kind you put on your burgers or your fries, but trying to catch up with what was going on with China, Japan, Burma, India, so on. Parts of Indochina. So what I get is that, right after December 7th, 1941, 2 or 3 days later, Washington, D.C. was going forward 100 miles an hour to try to come up with what they're going to do against the new menace. And as you may imagine, their thoughts weren't well collected at that point yet, although, they always have contingency plans. What are you going to do if X invades us, or B does this, that, the other thing? So they always have contingency plans. They were being talked about. The Japanese menace was being talked about a lot. And that thing was going either way. There were certainly folks who said, just let the Far East be handled by the Japanese. We'll make it their sphere of influence. That's all well and good if you're 7,000, 9,000 miles away living in your sphere of influence. But if you're the Chinese people, or if you're the Burmese people, or if you're the Indo-Chinese people, you don't want these Japanese with their boot on your neck. You don't want that, particularly the Japanese. People were just horrible what they did, atrocities. However, most of the belligerents in World War II had their share of atrocities. Anyway, to get on with the story, I would like to start with the fact that Burma, first of all, was not a happy camper at the time. And why was Burma not a happy camper? Well, because X number of years before all of this, Britain decided to make Burma one of its royal colonies. So what it did is it went in, it marched into Burma, took it over, and unlike many other areas where maybe they would have left the native population in control with a little overseeing from the Home Office in London, 10 Downing. What they did is they brought in literally thousands of Indians from India to serve as civil servants. Okay? And they gave no working opportunities in the civil service of Burma to the Burmese people. Big mistake. Big mistake. Britain, that's all they did. They made mistakes. That's what they do. They're all just about making mistakes. That's what they do. Look what they did in America. I mean, come on. So they do that. The Burmese then hate them forever. And when the war came, and it was an opportunity for the Burmese to help the Japanese, well, what do you think they did? They helped the Japanese. Because there were probably 4 different fighting groups fighting armies, just the breakdown of those who were fighting in Burma. And of course, what they were fighting for was to keep China open so it could be supplied, to fend off the ravenous wolf coming into their land from Japan. So that's why things were being fought over there. And of course, Japan was in the process of taking over the world. And they were infiltrating from the south and the east and attempting to infiltrate from the north into Burma, I'm talking about now, because Burma is situated such. Now, I don't know if you could see this map color-wise is a little difficult, but Burma is this piece of blue over here, okay? This would be the part of Burma that stretches down along the Malay Peninsula. It's also on the east part of that peninsula. It is Malay, all right? And then you have the various seas that surround all of this. So Burma, this over here, terrible colors on this map. Okay. And what they like to call places like Sumatra and Java, Borneo, they would call them Netherlands Indies. The Netherlands Indies. In Burma, over here, this is really Burma up here. This is Thailand. And a little bit of Burma, the light blue, comes down this far. Thailand, then known as Siam, coming down into the Malay states, ending at Singapore. At Singapore, at the outset of the war, is the spot where two major British vessels, war vessels, the Prince of Wales, their big and greatest battleship, and another one, the Repulse, which may have been a heavy cruiser. They got attacked and sunk by the Japanese right off of Singapore, right at the outset of the war. So the Brits were at a disadvantage there right off the bat. Anyway, so as I was saying, the Japanese over here, this little blue strip, Japanese, this was becoming their sphere of influence from Manchuria to Shantung Peninsula, the Yellow Sea, the Yellow River, all of this stuff was becoming their sphere of influence. And they were driving in from Indochina here, Hanoi. They already had a foothold in this place, and they were driving in to get in through northern Thailand and Siam, and this is where these folks become allies of the Japanese, which finally answered my question that I had for a long time. How come Thailand was never, invaded by Japan and put under the thumb? Because they said, hey, we'll be your allies. That's why. So they come in and they're going to infiltrate Burma. They're going to do it from here. They're going to do it from down here because already they got this water. The Andamans, the Nicobars, much more so the Andaman Islands. And all of this is in the Bay of Bengal. All right, they're coming in here. They take over Rangoon, which is like the major shipping port for Burma. They come in here, and they're trying to come in over the top, too, from China. Now, this is where all the mess and all the fuss about the Burma Road and the hump and the Stillwell Road, which was originally the Lido Road, but Chiang Kai-shek in 1945 suggested they change it to the Stillwell Road because the general had done an awful amount of effort to try to avoid having China being invaded by Japan from that neck of the woods up there, northern Burma, southeast China, okay, southeast China, Luqiao. They're trying to point out here the Burma Road. They're also trying to point out the Stillwell Road, and I think that the names are similar, about similar place, Stillwell Road, Burma Road, so on and so forth. But the point is that in this general area, this is where the hump was, where they would fly, the Flying Tigers would come over and bring the supplies to keep China up and running. Of course, that was also not at did not go as well as we may have wanted it to, because when the commodities would land in China, all the warlords had to get their cut first, So maybe 25% of what we sent over there was used for the war effort. Most of it went into the warlords' pockets. A lot of it was used to bolster the competing armies post World War II. One being the armies of Chiang Kai-shek, the other being the armies of the communists. Now, if you want to read history in a broad view, you might suspect that if we had acted differently during World War II, those armies, the Chinese armies that became affiliated with the communists, may not have done so. And, if we would have decided to help them, rather than always and only helping Chiang Kai-shek, who was no great shakes, particularly as a general. He was like the British. All he could do was make mistakes. That was his forte. And he was constantly making orders, sending them out, then less than 24 hours, changing them. It was just, you can't run a military operation like that. But that's what he did. And I'm sure many of the changes came at the bequest of his lovely wife, Madam Chiang Kai-shek, who was second in command over there. She was telling him pretty much what to do. And people would say, well, she was a strong woman, she was well educated, this and that and the other thing. It really doesn't matter, because in a democracy, really, the wives aren't supposed to be running the show. Now, in America, you have cases of that all over the place, where the wives are running the show. It just none of it holds up under scrutiny. None of it. But the war there, they like to refer to it as the India, Burma, China, or China, Burma, India, and try to bring all those nations as part of the naming of this zone of battle. Okay? Now, for the most part, Burma was taken over. I would say somewhere near 70% of Burma was taken over during World War II. Somewhere from a little bit above central Burma, above Mandalay, down to Rangoon, was taken over by the Japanese. And they were running the show there. Now, like I said, many of the Burmese people were okay with that, because they hated the British. The conventional wisdom that's out on the street today, just over the top praises the Brits, like they were the greatest things in sliced bread. When indeed, everywhere you look, they were a horror show. The way they treated their sailors, horror show. Not to say the way they treated their soldiers, horror show. And they had this just gigantic schism between the haves and the have-nots, which showed up immensely in the military. The haves, the wealthy class officers got, they got the cream of the pudding, what's the saying? They had nicer quarters, better food, better equipment. They had to pay for their uniforms. It was a big deal. They had the money, you know. Whereas the common soldier or sailor, they got common food. Anyway, back to Burma. So the Chinese wanted Burma because A, they were going to come over the top and get into China that way. If you remember, I'm pointing at the map. There's Burma. Here's Thailand, Indochina. They're coming in. The Japs had their foothold in Hanoi. Okay, coming in. And once they got here, they were going to go up. And using the same Burma road that the Allies had been using, they were going to get into China and take over. That never really happened. Japan never really got its way in China. They just had totally bitten off way too much, way more than they could chew. But that's the foolishness of those who wage war. There's no minimal amount that will do. You gotta go full bore, which means at the end of the day you're gonna lose anyway, because you're gonna run out of resources. And there's just no winning with war. Nobody wins. People like to think that after these world wars, these people won or those people won. It's not true, because if you look at the economies, and that's why the wars are fought, the economies are still terrible. And they're always getting worse. So, you can't win. War is a losing proposition all around. Anyway, but Japan wasn't content with just having its eyes set on China. It wanted to take over India too. Now that shows you how idiotic these guys were. At the time, I think India maybe had 900 million people. Japan probably had 60 million, if that much. So, but they were going to take them over. They were going to rule India. They were going to rule the world. If India is just another hop, skip, and a jump, and you got all of Africa. That was their intentions. Never got that far. Never, not even close. Stilwell took his troops and other people and refugees from Burma. He took them up what was called the Lido Road, that eventually became the Stilwell Road, up more to the north and into India that way, so that these people could at least have their lives saved. I don't know if they would have much of a life, but they would be alive. They could breathe, and they could eat food. So he did that. He saved all these people. And also to show you the egotism of these folks running these wars, the Brits and the Allies, I guess, could not figure out a way to get materials into China. So what they wound up doing was, because at the time, India was part of the Middle East. It may still be. They looked at India as the Middle East. And when you start to get into Thailand, and maybe even Burma, you were in the Far East. But, and because of that, England was a lot of, hey, listen, it's not our problem. Our problem stops in the Middle East. You guys deal with that stuff over there. Anyway, what they did, and this map is not going to show it, but what they did is, you know how India is configured. It's a big triangle, big triangle. Well, up here on the top, on the west coast, on the Bay of Bengal, maybe the Arabian Sea. Not quite sure. I don't have the map in front of me, but there's a city, Karachi. I don't know if it still has that name, Karachi. Not too far down from Pakistan. And so they decided Karachi was already established as a seaport, a place where you get commercial stuff into India for points beyond. So they said, okay, well, we're going to supply China from Karachi. I said, hey guys, that's like half the world away. What are you, crazy? But their egos said they could do whatever they thought. If it popped in their head, they thought they could do it. You know, and 9 times out of 10, they couldn't. They couldn't. And that Karachi connection was more a failure than anything else. As a matter of fact, to get Stilwell into the theater, they flew him to Karachi first, then they had to fly him back to Delhi, and then fly him into Burma. These guys were nuts. Nuts. But that's who rules the world. Anyway, it is quite a bit about ego and ego blinding the individuals from any attempt at truthful evaluation of what's going on, because the ego is in charge and has the blindfolds on these folks. So be that as it may, before I got involved, and by the way, I got and still getting most of my information about Burma and India and China and the Japanese and their war efforts during World War II. I'm getting it from a book that I undoubtedly bought at a library book sale, undoubtedly. And what it is, it's a book published by the War Department's history branch. And what they published, and they got on this pretty much right away, right after the war ended. It's like a history of World War II in 91 volumes. And I just so happened to come across a single volume in an area that I was particularly interested in, you know, the Southeast, broadly saying, the Southeast, the Far East. So I got it, and Stilwell was, as a matter of fact, its subtitle is Stilwell in the Far East, something like that. So it's a lot of Stilwell stuff. And I had, long before I got that, I had read George Orwell's novel, Burma Days. If you're interested, I would recommend it. George always has something unique and brilliant to say. But I also came across, before any of this, was a couple of other novels. Not novels, no, historical recollections, historical recordings that went on. One was about an elephant contingent, or an elephant, I don't want to say an army, but a regiment, or elephants that had been brought into use to help get the refugees out of Burma. It may have been called elephant something or other. I don't know. But then there was another one that involved elephants, and it was and Burma. It was about tea plantations and their owner operators of the tea plantations in basically an area known to us as Assam, which is a very far eastern province of India. And in that area, and in a great deal of northern Burma, the ending of the eastern Himalayas, the Himalayas come arching down into Assam. And then when they get near Burma, they seem to make a kind of like a U-turn, but not complete U-turn. A turn to the right and a turn north. Now, I'm sure that geographers have given names to those mountain ranges. But anyway, they peel off from their southerly direction and they go off into the direction of Burma and the northern parts of Thailand and into China. You know, the Yangtze River has its beginning streams in those mountains. As a matter of fact, that's not happening. Anyway, if we go like this, these two paintings are supposed to depict the ruggedness of Far East China, Southeast, Far East. That's what they're supposed to depict. This stuff over here, this was supposed to be depicting things about Far East China. And I have quite a few more that I could stick up here. But I'm thinking I may want to leave part of the wall blank. But like I say, eventually Burma, looks like about 70% of it is in the hands of the Japanese. And not good hands to be in either, by the way. Especially if you don't like getting killed or having a sword drop on your neck. You know, you just cannot get away from the gosh awful truth that humans come from a very seriously damaged piece of biology that was scattered throughout the globe, you know, and allowed to develop and grow in numbers. When you think of all the atrocities that humans have done over the years, it's just impossible not to come up with that conclusion. There's not a speck of goodness anywhere. Anyway, is that enough for today? I wanted to try to convey the chaos that was going on right after Pearl Harbor. I mean, it was just total chaos. And actually, there was a general, I don't have his name at my fingertips right now, but they had selected right away. They said, this guy's going to be our top guy over there. He's good. He knows China. He's got war experience. He's not a Washington paper pusher. He's the real deal, and we're going to send him over there. Well, these guys have the option to review their next assignment, and they can turn it down if they want. Well, this guy reviewed the assignment, saw that it was all chaos, saw that he was not getting a good deal. He was going to be hung up to dry. The Chinese were going to just have a field day with him and the American troops. So he turned it down. So that's when Stilwell's name came up. Everybody thought he would be a good person to put in there. He was resilient. He was gung-ho. He was a good tactician. And he knew the area. He had liaisons with the Chinese already. He knew the language. He was a good candidate. And he, being the patriotic trooper that he was, he said, "You tell me to go, I go." That was his response. So he went, and the rest is history. But like I said before, I think, including malaria, I think that the effects of being in the jungle for those years and the turmoil and the stress and all that took their toll on him, as it would anybody. And when he came back to the States, within 2 years he was dead. He was still in his 60s, so it wasn't like he was, at an age when most of us would expect to be walking off the stage. And he still should have had 10 or more years left to enjoy his retirement, but he didn't. Another casualty of the war. So, World War II, Burma, Indonesia, Netherlands, Indies. And after World War I, we gladly giving up so much territory to the Japanese. Here, take it. We don't want it. You take it. Your sphere of influence. Do it. You're a big power. Do it. We don't care about using morality as a spotlight. No. We just wanted to get that damn Far East off our plate, and get on with our bourgeois lives of Europe and England and America. We want to go to our cocktail parties. We want to have fun. We can't be bothered with those billions of massively deteriorating masses of the Far East. We don't want anything to do with that. Get that stuff out of here. Out of here. Go send Joe Stilwell over there. He'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. Send that guy. What's his name? Yeah, that guy. Douglas somebody. Yeah, send him down to Canberra or Australia to have a nice headquarters and have a good time. And then when he's fat, dumb, and happy, let him run up the New Guinea coast and up the Philippines and kick everybody's butt. He could do that. He's good at that. So, and let him have his champagne and wine and top foods all the way up. Okay? Not a problem. Because he's from the right stuff, that guy, whatever his name was, Douglas somebody. He's from the right stuff. Joe, it doesn't seem like Joe really came from the right stuff. I mean, nobody who lived in Yonkers ever came from the right stuff. So, we can sacrifice a Joe Stilwell, not a problem. All right, I'm starting to rant, and I should shut down, and I will. But let it be known that the folks in Burma were very PO'd about what happened to them by the actions of the Brits, our wonderful allies, and the revolutionary behavior we've seen in Burma in recent times can be traced all the way back to what happened when the British Empire put its boot on the Burmese people. Okay? So all the romance of Burmese days, Rudolph Kipling writing Mandalay, I don't know if that's the name of the poem, but it is one of the top examples of what Kipling could do on one of his better days. He's one of these guys that wrote so much. Some of it had to wind up being okay, you know? And the Mandalay poem is definitely okay. Or maybe even more than that. Great description of mornings over the Irrawaddy as it moved through Mandalay. Those were romantic days. Those were when hearts could be gladdened by what the eyes saw as they surveyed their countries. Now, when the eyes survey their countries, all I see is steel, asphalt, concrete, noise, imbecile recreation. Nothing to get glad about. Isn't that a line from one of the Beatles songs? Anyway, of course, all that romantic stuff was for the better off people. People who were better off. Now, you didn't necessarily have to be super rich to get a warm and fuzzy feeling about where you lived. If you had some amount of well-being, you could very well, love where you lived, love the country, love the people, so on and so forth, and life was worth living. But that's been shut down now. They've turned the people of Vietnam into factory workers. And I'm sure that's the same thing that they did in Burma, factory workers. In my mind, people who were peasants in those villages working the rice paddies were light years ahead of those factory workers now who do revolting, monotonous, tedious work all day long and then jump on their motorbikes for the journey home, where they'll inject some hallucinogenics and they'll look about their 400 square foot apartment given to them by that lovely government of theirs and evaluate their lives as being contemporary and thrilling and exciting and just everything a body could want, except meaning. Meaning, that's gone. No meaning. So a great harm has been done to the world as a result of the takeover by the developing classes. The folks who build what's going on in Arabia, the folks who build what's going on in Palestine, in East Africa, West Africa, what's going on in Europe. Okay? Very, very debilitating, denigrating, and deprivation depriving people of their God-given right to be themselves, to be free spirits, to love being alive without any artificial stimulants. What are you going to do? I mean, there's probably not 3 other people on the planet who would say what I just said. And I don't care. Listen, I lived my life. I've said this before. I've lived my life. I don't have a dog in this fight anymore. It's done. It's done. It's not going to be saved. The world's going down. That's it. End of story. The more I read, the more I dread. Reading should become illegal for me. It's not a pretty sight, it just isn't. And I was just reading somewhere the need for clearing virgin forest land is still a major part of development. It still is. I mean, they're just going there. What little is left, they are hell-bent on getting rid of it. Hell-bent. So I think in my neighborhood, I think the real estate agents tell the people who are getting ready to sell their houses, chop down all the trees. The prospective buyers don't want to see trees on your property. Chop down all the trees, because I see them chopping trees down everywhere I look. Must be a reason for it. And there's some of these people, I happen to know that they are at a point in their life where they're going to sell and move to Florida. Where else do you move? Florida. God, give me a break. Anyway, there's not much more for me to relate now. I mean, Burma is an extremely interesting area of research. And that whole area. The one that doesn't jump up as being extremely interesting is Thailand. For some reason, it just doesn't seem to have any panache. It's just a jungle with a few temples. That's what Thailand seems to me. But all the rest of it, from India through Burma, Assam, Nagaland, Bhutan, I think it is, southeastern China. I hardly could say I have any reverence for northern China, say in and around the area of Beijing, because those places are just so overcrowded. You can't breathe, so you can't think. So I don't have anything to say about that. It's just way too overcrowded. Way too. Anyway, but they must have something up their sleeves too, those Chinese. We haven't been hearing too much about them lately. Perhaps the quiet before the storm. Okay, listen, I just love to talk. I would talk forever, but I've already talked for 48 minutes. That's enough. Here we go. I could come back to this anytime I want.